Hello, dear ones. This is Alice Dillon, and you are with me in my little short series on intuitive practice. So, if you've been looking at expanding your intuitive reach and looking at intuitive counseling as a possible addition to your healing practice, or just in your daily life, wanting to know how your intuition is doing at assessing others, then this course is for you. Just a short overview. We're just doing 9 people who have already put themselves in the public space, and we're coming to this with no judgment. We are having an intuitive assessment of certain individuals with respect and with compassion and sensitivity. So this is the kind of assessment you would do with a client if they came to you for whatever your practice is, and it's looking at them and looking into them energetically and seeing what you can see. So in my last episode, I said to you that we did an episode on Joe Rogan, and so now we're looking at Kevin Trudeau, and this is a fascinating individual. By his own admission, he was a indigo child, and we know that because he was recruited young by something called the Brotherhood, which is one of those secret societies. And the secret societies, as we know, are a breeding ground for the shiny bums. Yes, the shiny bums work on their own lineage, but they do have a recruitment system that extends beyond that, their direct family, and that seems to be anchored mostly in the secret societies. So Kevin Trudeau came to my attention on YouTube, and his mention of the Brotherhood and having been trained by the Brotherhood sparked my interest because, as you might know if you've been listening to me for a while, I know that the shiny bums have known about us, the indigos and the sensitives and the HSPs and whatnot, for a very long time, at least since World War II, and they have been manipulating public perception and even the white coats' perception of us since then, which has had an impact on the indigo community. Instead of being born into a system that acknowledges what we are and who we are and addresses our particular needs, or addresses the understanding of an indigo child as they're being raised, the existence of indigos has really been set to one side as a truth and harnessed only in weapons of war and destruction. And so it's had to exist on the fringe. Anyone who's truly authentically wanted to stand in their abilities as an indigo has had to really live on the outside of normal. So I was fascinated with what the shiny bums know. I know they know a lot more than is public, and here was a man, Kevin Trudeau, who was trained in one of these shiny bum camps, so to speak, and he now gives courses. According to him, he broke away from the shiny bum collective, the Brotherhood, by publishing his book on natural cures, which was very popular and did very well, and they then came after him, and that ended up with a conflict. And he ended up spending years in jail on a contempt of court charge. Nothing convicted of. He wasn't convicted of any bad thing. So it seems like the evidence points to he was definitely exiled from the shiny bum camp, if he was ever truly in it. He was a successful entrepreneur in his own right, did a lot of good things, and certainly has seemingly gone through the training on how they train sixth sensed or indigo people. He doesn't clearly make the definition between sixth sense and normies. He's developing a brand now, which he's had to really, I guess, rebuild himself post-jail. And his brand is more focused at the shiny bum wannabes. So people who want to live in the echelon of using gold leaf toilet paper. That's where his brand seems to be positioned. And in that context, he's not making any differentiation in his verbiage between 5 and 6 cent store normies and others. He's really just throwing a blanket out there. And I went through his material because I wanted to know, what is it they know, what is it they're teaching their children, what is it what tools are they giving their own collective and keeping secret, because these are within secret societies. And there's a lot of wisdom there. So in his own words, his very first thing in terms of learning is, do you trust the source of what you're learning? So teachability index, he calls it. And in terms of being able to teach you anything, he lays down a teachability index as, are you teachable? And the very first thing is, who do you listen to? And this is possibly my most significant point of disagreement with him in his course, is the answer to that question. He's setting up the question, who do you listen to, as in, you should listen to him because he's made fortunes. Now, bear in mind, he's positioning himself as a manifestation abundance guru. So who should you listen to? You should listen to a person who's made a lot of money and can afford gold leaf toilet paper. And so from that perspective, if that's your goal, then if your focus is manifestation and abundance, then certainly I agree with the principle that you should listen to someone who's made money and who is abundant. In terms of who you should listen to as a general strategy, anyone who's been following me for a while will know my answer to that is always yourself. You should listen to you. Go with what feels good. Go with what. Always check in. Your inner guidance is always going to guide you better than anyone else. But with that being said, if you trust yourself first, and then possibly entertain his thoughts and sharings, then absolutely he's a source of knowledge on what the shiny bums know. That's just the way it is. So for us as indigos, that holds an interesting perspective, because we can know what knowledge is out there in the world that actually does directly apply to us. Because as much as so many of the things he discusses are possible for all people, so the quality of human attention is still invaluable. Human attention from 5 sense people is still magnificent. From 6 sense, from spiritually perceptive individuals, it's just that much deeper and broader and wider. So that's the layout. That's who the man is. That's who he puts himself across to being. He has a fascinating story, and really, I think, deserving of a lot of respect, if his story is true, that he opposed these people by putting out a publication on natural cures and natural remedies, and did time for it, so he stood by his convictions and seems to have held a good outlook despite all of that. So absolutely go in and have a look at what he has to say. Go and listen to what he shares. It's certainly insightful. And now moving on to the man himself. So my request or my suggestion to you outside of this is to go and have a look for yourself before you listen to my evaluation. Go and have a look at the person, go and assess what they've put out, and come to some insightful conclusions of your own. See what you pick up from the people. See what you see when you look at these individuals. And so at the outset, I must say that he's obviously an indigo. He's obviously spiritually perceptive, and yet he's very much in the 5-sensed world. That's the space he occupies, and that is the space that he plays in. There's obviously a depth of wisdom there. But you can see clearly when you listen to various different videos or clips of his that there are times when he's coming from very intellectual, mindful space. And then there are times when he's coming from a deeply emotional, heart-saturated space. And I imagine there are times when he's fully physically immersed as well. So what that points me to is that while he's obviously achieved great things, his childhood trauma as an indigo has never fully been resolved. While he doesn't isolate his emotional self, he's not fully integrated. In one moment you'll see the very intellectual Kevin, another moment you'll see very heartfelt, emotional Kevin. And I imagine in other moments you'll see a very physically centered Kevin. And so there is a need there for reintegration. Carl Jung would call it shadow work. I tend to work at it as knowing that the split happens in childhood when we isolate an element of ourselves that we find blameworthy of people's rejection. We often isolate that part of ourselves in the dungeon and then need to reintegrate it back into the wholeness of ourselves. And so while he has an active intellectual, emotional, physical beingness, it's clear that those three are not aligned perfectly. Another indicator of that is he's a self-confessed control freak. And you always know with people who are, with indigos especially, that have a need to control, that their intellect has been dominant for a period, and that they've relied on their intellectual self or stood in it firmly and come to depend on it. And so any indigo that tends to be controlling is possibly intellectually stronger than their emotional self. A very interesting element of his is that he's also not comfortable in his physical self, which is fascinating because he's achieved incredible amounts, he's done wonderful things, and yet it's so clear that he's physically uncomfortable in his own skin, which fascinated me because, and he overcompensates for that by dressing excessively well and always being in the best clothing. But even in the best clothing, he's really not comfortable in it. And so I asked my people, will he ever integrate? Because it's one thing to see a normie, supposed undercover normie, living this life with all these tools on how to manifest abundance and how to be happy. And you can see that he's achieved a level of peace and certainty and happiness. And my question was, what would he ever be capable of if he were to claim his true indigo self? What if he acknowledged that he is on the leading edge of the evolution of humanity and truly stood in his indigo self and embraced that element of himself? And I think he would be a force to be reckoned with. I think it would be close on superhero status with everything that he knows. Were this man to fully integrate, so align his emotional, mental, and physical selves, were he ever to do that and truly allow his spirit self to take up habitation, I think he would be indomitable. I think he would be majestic. Will he ever do that? Unfortunately, he's really reached an apex in the five-sensed world. So he's at the top of, he seems to be surrounded by five-sensed reality. And he's really reached a pinnacle of five-sensed beingness. So what would be his incentive? Why would he step into and embrace his indigo nature, his spiritually perceptive nature? Why would he reach beyond? And that's a bit of a shame. That I feel like that would be a loss to humanity if he stays in the five-sensed world. As I say, his branding is very much around shiny bum wannabes. So if you want to live a shiny bum lifestyle and traipse around on yachts. Can you imagine? I think there is no greater hell for an indigo than to be stuck at sea with 500 normies. I can't imagine that there are very many of us, but that's one of his draws, is to take you on cruises with a bunch of normies out at sea. Whoa! Oh, excuse me. It's a personal horror. It's a personal horror to be stuck in the mired. Imagine not being able to get away from other people. So, very obviously, he's very focused in the five-sensed normie world, and he's at the apex of that. So why would he ever seek to transform that? Why would he ever seek to elevate beyond the five-sensed reality? And yet we also live in the five-sensed reality. So can we harness what he knows, what he was taught in our lives? I think that we can, and we do. There is so much of what he says that is already out there in our communities. The power of our attention across Abraham Hicks, who he endorses, by the way. He very much acknowledges Abraham Hicks, and he's a lovely source, I think, of information. I was weary because of his shiny bum affiliations, but again, curious because of his shiny bum affiliations. And so what I also learned, beyond being able to evaluate him as a human being, was that the shiny bums really have had the knowledge on who we are and what we're capable of for a long time and have kept it secret, which we already knew, but his work gives confirmation of that. And in this time of being in this conflict in the world, where we really are in the third great shaking, as the Hopis would put it, if not the kinetic version, then certainly the lead up to it, then he really gives some insight into where the shiny bums are and what their thinking is and where they're trying to steer the world. So as a human being, I think he's done incredibly well with the knowledge he has. I think he was very brave to break out of their protection with his anti-big pharma revelations and compilation. And I think that he has a lot of interesting information to share. As an intuitive assessment, I think his potential is astronomical. And I'm not sure that he'll ever truly achieve it. But certainly in the normal sphere, he will always excel and do well. And so if you want to follow along with his YouTube shorts and talks and whatnot, I think there are things to be gained from that. So what did you think? What was your evaluation? Let me know in the comments if you had something completely different. Let's have a chat about it. Let's see what you picked up. Let's see what your assessment was of him. And as always, please remember, we're doing this not in judgment. We're not judging anybody. We're not evaluating people from a judgmental point. We're coming at this with compassion, and we're really just exercising our own perception to look into someone and evaluate for ourselves what we can see beyond the obvious. All right, loves. So my next one will be Russell Brand. Yes, that's where we're going to go. And this is especially for all of our indigo brothers and sisters that have been through addiction or going through addiction or still in addiction. So this will address some of that too. So go with love, always.